The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. In his book, Deep Utopia, Life and Meaning in a Solved World, philosopher Nick Bostrom ponders what life could be like in a solved world, a world where everything works, and better than if human hands got in the way. What then, asks Bostrom, is the reason to work? Is it to earn extra income, or because working is an intrinsically valued activity? Bostrom is the head of the Future of Humanity Institute at Oxford, a philosopher with a background in theoretical physics, computational neuroscience, logic, and artificial intelligence. He has been called the Superintelligent Swede because of the deep philosophical work he undertakes as he examines the trajectory of human life at the intersection of destruction and possibility. Bostrom says if artificial intelligence can be achieved, it would be an event of unparalleled consequence, perhaps even a rupture in the fabric of history. A rupture, Bostrom says, that will change the course of human history, and it's an open question as to whether or not it would end human history. I invited Nick Bostrom to join me for a conversation that matters about our flirtatious and tempestuous relationship with the evolution of intelligence. Nick, welcome.
Thanks for inviting me.
Well, it's my pleasure. You know, I really enjoyed digging into Deep Utopia because it's a look at the possibility of the optimistic side of the development of AI. And so just before we get started, I wouldn't mind reading out loud right now the preface to the book, because the way you compare our fascination with our artificial intelligence to a child in awe of an overnight snowfall is really interesting. So, and I think it'll help set the stage for our conversation. So here's just that part. You say, like children opening their eyes to a new day, having gone to bed the previous night as tufts of snow begin to fall. We dash to the window and lift ourselves to the tip of our toes to behold the landscape transformed, a winter wonderland glittering with possibilities for discovery and play. Even the tree branches, before so boringly bare, have been changed into something beautiful and magical. We feel we are inhabiting a storybook or a game world, and we want very much to put on our boots and mittens immediately and run outside to see it, touch it, experience, and play, play, play. We really are at that stage, aren't we, when we are looking at AI, which is still a nascent development, but we have stars in our eyes. What do you think it is that fascinates us so much about the idea that there could be another kind of intelligence?
Well, when you were reading that, it struck me I should almost have called it Canadian Utopia, maybe rather than Deep Utopia, with the Winter Wonderland vignette. I think it's natural for humans to ponder and dream about whether there could be a better world than the one we currently inhabit. Traditionally, sometimes these thoughts have gone in a spiritual or theological direction, of course, and then there have been various utopian writings throughout history. Like medieval peasants had this fantasy of the land of cocaine, which was kind of where rivers would overflow with wine and roasted turkeys would land at the plate. And if you imagine living in extreme poverty, days of backbreaking labor, like just the idea of having plenty to eat and time to relax would already be enough to kind of fully satisfy you as a vision of hope and aspiration. I think now when we are approaching what I think will be this transition to a machine intelligence era, we maybe need to give some deeper thought to what ultimately it is that we would be hoping to achieve if things go well, if we avoid all the pitfalls and the dangers, like what is the actual destination that we are steering towards?
You wrote Superintelligent a number of years ago, and a number of people point to it and go, oh, okay, you pointed out what some of the challenges and pitfalls would be ahead of us as we start to introduce artificial general intelligence into our worlds. But now you've written Deep Utopia, and it's as though you're saying, well, okay, we've considered what the negatives are. What is it about why we also have to pay so much attention to what the optimistic possibilities are?
Well, I think if we never lift our eyes from the ground and gaze towards the horizon, we have no way of telling whether we are on the right track or not. Like, we might be making a lot of progress, but unless we consider where we are ultimately headed, like, we might be making progress in the wrong direction. So I think from that point of view, it's useful occasionally to take some time to reflect. I also think there is the possibility we might have some scenario where at one point or another, some group of people, be it a few people in some AI labs or some government leaders or maybe some humanity-wide deliberative process, but some people have to at some point make some decisions about which direction to steer towards once AI can automate all human work and do a whole bunch of other things. And that will be a really hard deliberation that might affect the shape of things to come for millions of years. And so it would seem useful to me to have something to read in preparation for going into that deliberation. And that was another little goal with writing this book, to maybe not just introduce specific ideas and concepts and thoughts and arguments, but also perhaps put the reader in a certain frame of mind to explore these topics with a kind of generous, playful, open-minded attitude.
The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. I'm somewhat fascinated by our ability to actually achieve the idea or achieve the building of artificial intelligence. Partly because I go, okay, my thinking or understanding about AI is that no matter what way it's built, it's still a logarithmic program, whereas our brains and the way that we learn is through heuristic learning. Can we actually bridge that gap from an algorithmic machine to one that can mimic the sort of the heuristic learning capabilities of human beings?
I think that is what the current generation of AI systems are beginning to do. AI used to be, back in the 60s and 70s, about handcrafting rules, logical principles, and then a database, and you could make simple logical inferences. But that so-called good old-fashioned AI didn't scale. These systems were brittle, they lack common sense. Now, and indeed since around 2012, 2014, the focus has been on machine learning. So this means crafting algorithms that are able to learn from experience and then build up representations on the basis of that. And we've seen a string of breakthroughs from perception, where it became possible to have an AI look at an image and recognize what's in it, to various game-playing AIs, AlphaGo beating the world's Go player, and then more recently these large language models, which exhibit certainly glimmers of understanding and common sense and can communicate with us in ordinary language. But I think it would be a mistake to index too hard on what AI currently can do and think of that as being AI. This is a rapidly moving field, and AI 2 or 4 or 6 years from now will be quite different from what AI is today. So we have to look at where the puck is going. And to me, it seems clear the puck is going towards superintelligence. Systems that can do everything that we can do, but ultimately do that much faster and much better with greater precision.
So I'd like to ask you, your model moving forward, especially when we look at Deep Utopia, how does that play when we take into consideration maybe Yuval Noah Harari's more reductionist look at AI? You seem to be a bit more expansive. Why are you as optimistic as you are right now?
Yeah, well, I mean, whether it's a a view of optimism or pessimism is a separate question. I mean, indeed, I think there will be significant risks associated with this machine intelligence transition, as well as enormous upside if we get it right. But ultimately, what has enabled us humans to attain this kind of unique position on the planet is not that we have stronger muscles or sharper teeth than other animals. It's that we have slightly differently configured brains, but these are finite physical systems. And in theory, there is no reason why you couldn't implement similar algorithms in a machine substrate with sufficiently powerful computers. And then if you make the computers even bigger, you could have machine minds that think faster and remember more and can develop higher level of abstractions. And I think maybe this, back when I wrote Superintelligence, still seemed a little bit sort of science fiction-y like, but over the last several years, we've seen a big shift in public perception. And indeed, world leaders now are starting to take the idea of transformative AI seriously. We've had statements coming out from the White House. There was the Global Summit on AI in London a few months ago. I was just yesterday in Brussels. There was a high-level AI meeting there, and we've seen this dramatic shift now where I still think people are indexing too much on what AI is today, but there is at least this kind of dawning awareness that we might be on the threshold to some big transformation.
So can we actually, let's say we get to that point, can we actually put the word that I hear people using right now, guardrails around AI, if we're developing an intelligence that would grow to be superior to ours? Because as you pointed out, I mean, as human beings, we are able to do so many things because of our intellectual capabilities, our ability to be able to, use our brain. Well, superintelligence, or the more dominant intelligence, wins out. I mean, that's the rule of nature. Will we be able to say, okay, AI, you can only go so far. We want you to solve all of our problems, but we don't want you to take over?
Yeah, we want to align it with human values or develop scalable methods for AI control, such that we could be confident that no matter how smart the AI is, it's on our side fundamentally, like an extension of our own agency. And this is a technical research challenge, which is as yet unsolved, but a lot of work is now being done by it. All the leading AI labs have research groups focusing specifically on this. And the hope is that by the time somebody figures out how to make machines super intelligent, by that time we will also have figured out how to make super intelligent machines safe. But that is not a given, right? This depends on the relative rate of progress towards AI capability versus AI alignment.
The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. I know that we're wanting to talk about, well, what's the upside of all of this, in the sense that all of our problems have been solved. One of them would be even the appropriate amount of power generation that's going to be needed for all of these super data centers, which is going to be extraordinary, because these NVIDIA microchips require enormous amounts of power, and especially when you compound them by the vast numbers. So hopefully it'll solve our issues around power generation. But more importantly, and I think this is the point of your book that I find really so fascinating, what does it do to us if suddenly we go, well, what's my purpose? Because so many of us look for purpose in what we do through the work that we produce on a day-to-day basis. How do we then find meaning?
Yeah, so we'd have to rethink the basis upon which we ground our sense of self-worth or dignity, for sure. I think there are layers to this onion. And at the most superficial level, but extremely importantly, there is the kind of obvious point that with this kind of technology, if it's appropriately used and controlled, it could help us get rid of a lot of the negatives that currently plague the human condition. And this should not be minimized. Just eliminating Alzheimer's disease, leukemia, extreme poverty. You could go through the list. and it's a long and sad list. And just getting rid of those would already be an unfathomable boon. So that's like the least that could be accomplished. But then you can go further and you can think, well, a lot of the jobs that we currently have to do would no longer have to be done by humans because machines could do them instead. And this includes not just manual labor, like that we think are kind of at risk of automating, but also the more creative and intellectual jobs that currently exist, including my own. I imagine there'll be much better AI philosophers in the future if things go well. So then we get to the second layer of onion in that we wouldn't have to work for a living. So what then would you do to fill your day? And that's usually where conversations on this topic stop, because that's already a kind of radical idea to wrap your head around, that nobody would need to work at all. But I think there are further layers to peel off. So you could think about this, what it would mean to live in this kind of superintelligence powered world and the technological maturity it could bring along. It's not just all the effort we put in economic labor that would be rendered OTOs, but also a lot of the other activities we do on a day-to-day basis would become unnecessary. So maybe people say, well, if I didn't have to work all the time, maybe I would start to work out more, and that makes me feel good, get fit. But then you think at technological maturity, which is this condition that superintelligence could reach quickly, there would be other ways. So you could pop a pill and have the same physiological effects as you would from spending an hour on the Stairmaster. Like you could be fit without having to work out, and you could get the same endorphin rush. Then would there still be any point in the sweat at the gym? Probably not. Okay, so then what? Like, oh, maybe somebody else says, I'd really love, I'd love to actually learn mathematics. I'd love to understand mathematics. I was never any good at that at school. Maybe if I had time, I could. But then you think, like, in a technologically mature world, if you really think what it means for technology to have reached its limit, in that condition, that would be shortcuts to attaining mathematical competence. You could have, swarms of nanobots infiltrating your brain and slightly adjusting the synapses so that you then possessed mathematical skill. And you wouldn't have to spend hours poring over the textbooks and doing exercises. You could still choose to do that, but would there be any point if there was this much easier path to mathematical mastery? And you can go through kind of the activities that we fill our days with almost one by one, and for almost all of them, you could sort of cross them out, or at least put a question mark above them. They would seem at risk of losing their point in this hypothetical condition.
Okay, and then that becomes the real challenge. I mean, you talked about OTOs as being, kind of like, is it needed? Like, are we needed? And so I think that we have to find meaning some way, because there's something about the psychological structure of being a human being. You feel as though you want to be able to make a contribution, and that if you're, depending on what your faith is, that your role here is to live out God's will. And so much of that through the course of human history has been done by the work or through the work that you do. So would we not still want to work because of that feeling that we matter, that we're making a contribution in a way that is hoping to move the human experience forward?
Yeah, so that becomes a problem then in this situation of deep utopia, or if you imagine a solved world, as I call it in the book, in that it looks, at least at first glance, that we couldn't have purpose or meaning, because there would be, it seems at least, nothing that we would need to do. I mean, we could still do it. Like, you could just choose to commute into the office every day and sit and type a Word document or whatever your job consists of, right? But would you really? Like, if you could just like smash enter and the AI would do it all while you stayed at home in bed? Probably not. So now there's one further layer to this onion. So far I described like a kind of first a post-work condition and then a post-instrumental condition where you don't even have to, exercise or study or do a whole bunch of other things. I think there's like one further level to this, which is ultimately, I think we will have a plastic condition in the sense that we ourselves, our experiences, thoughts, our bodies become susceptible to human choice and wishes. Like we could use the same technological affordances to remold if you choose, to kind of basically choose how you feel or what you want and what you think at any given point in time. So if the only reason why you thought it is important to have purpose is because it makes us feel good and gets us out of bed every morning, and otherwise you just kind of feel depressed and useless. Well, certainly so far as we are concerned with just those feelings, that would be easy to fix at technological maturity. You could take some drug that gave you great motivation and focus and energy, and you could sort of devote yourself to any random arbitrary goal and feel super motivated to pursue it. The way some people today become super motivated to pursue some random goal, like improving their golf handicap or whatever particular thing somebody becomes obsessed with. So all of that would still be available as an option in this kind of soul world. The remaining problem, though, is if there is something lost, even though if you could feel very motivated and do all of these things, it would sort of be like kind of make up, like it would be tasks that they're not really needed for anything. Like we just choose to make ourselves want them so that we would have something to do and would feel happy about it, but they don't really serve any other purpose other than enabling the activity itself. So it's a form of play. Now, and is that enough, or is there something missing there? Is a kind of deep question.
The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. As you were talking about, this blending of course, technology and human beings, what are we talking about? We're talking about the convergence between machine and humanity, and maybe creating immortality. Because you constantly get replacement parts and can go on forever. For that, you have to have a reason for wanting to do it.
Yeah. Now, it should be said forever is a long time. And if you literally mean forever, then that might just be physically impossible, given ultimately we have the heat death of the universe that looms. I mean, trillions and trillions of it. But it's still an important distinction, because that is one of the things that separate what the best possible thing we might hope to engineer for ourselves on the one side, and say many religious conceptions of the afterlife on the other, where you would literally have immortality. So in a sense, from the perspective of eternity, whether we live for 80 years or 800 years or 80,000 years, it's kind of a blink in the eye of eternity either way. Like it's infinitesimally small compared to actual eternity. So it is worth making that distinction. Now, I certainly think extreme longevity would be technologically feasible in this kind of technologically mature condition. Whether in biological forms you could develop rejuvenation therapies and ways to repair the damage that occurs in our cells and between ourselves as we age. And then maybe bring down the accident risk. You could certainly have lifespans of thousands of years in that way. Or ultimately, I think probably more realistically, upload into computers, and then your software, you could make backup copies, etc. And we could have kind of astronomical lifespans. But you're right that at that point, the question is not so much whether this is technologically possible, but more whether it's desirable, or under what conditions is it desirable. We kind of know what it can mean to live a human-like existence with a human-like brain for 80 years or 100 years. Presumably that could keep going for like 200 years or something, but like once you really start to push 10,000 years or 100,000 years, it's not really clear, even if you remained kind of physically healthy throughout that time, whether your mind might not go stale and begin to stagnate over such extreme life durations. And so at that point, you might need to start to think about ways to upgrade yourself, to expand yourself, so that you could kind of continue to grow. I think like right now, we think of human growth as ceasing at age 15 or 20, and then you're fully grown, and then you stay there for a while, and then you kind of slowly rot. But I don't see any fundamental reason why we couldn't continue to grow up beyond 20. That might just be our current biology doesn't allow that, but I, for one, would be quite interested to see what kind of levels of maturity a human might attain if they could just continue like they did during their first 20 years, but continue that for another 200 years. Like, and I with some kind of technological aid, maybe you need extra neurons or something like that to sort of be able to continue to learn and develop for such long times.
Well, I'd be fascinated to experience that and witness it as well. The thing that I like so much about your book is that it poses the questions, it addresses potential outcomes, but most importantly, it gets us to think about the direction in which we're going. I think it's a fantastic read. Thank you very much for writing it and also taking the time to do this interview today. I appreciate your time.
No, thank you so much for reaching out.